I decided to talk today using a teaching symbol, Ganesh. And those of you who are unfamiliar with Ganesh, here's my Ganesh. And Ganesh is a Hindu god, 3,000-year-old at least Hindu god. And you can see that Ganesh has always is pictured with a little, either a mouse or a rat or a shrew. And Ganesh has an elephant head. And so that's my favorite Ganesh statue that is always near me. And here is a miniature Ganesh. And you'll notice down below, there's the rat again. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Ganesh is the Lord of thresholds, the remover of obstacles, and the God of beginnings in Hinduism. And whether you don't have to believe in Ganesh to invoke Ganesh as a teaching symbol. And so let's begin with thresholds. What we're going through today is definitely a threshold. It's a threshold that can be viewed as a doorway that we're crossing through, right? A doorway individually, a doorway as a community, a threshold as a planet that we're going through this time of change. And we can also view this as a metaphysical threshold beyond what the eyes can see. There is this threshold, this spiritual threshold that we're crossing through. And Ganesh can be invoked for guidance at this time as we're coming through the threshold. And the threshold is not static, right? You don't stay in the doorway. You're crossing through a doorway from one thing to another. So we can view this threshold as something to be cursed, or we can view this threshold as something to be blessed, as a sacred event. And that's what I'm positing today. And there's a helpful saying as we view the particular nature of the threshold that we're in. You may have heard, when things seem to be falling apart, they're really falling together, right? I'm not sure who said that, but Marianne Williamson later edited the saying in this way: don't be concerned that things appear to be falling apart. This has to happen in order for something new and wonderful to emerge. So there is this picture of clearing away the old to make way for the new. And so coming back to Ganesh, Ganesh can be invoked not only as a guide, but as a reminder of our own divinity and our own humanity blended into one. As we cross through this threshold, we can, as Greg Lavoie would say, we can trust the universe absolutely at this time. We can choose to do that. And Ganesh is also the remover of obstacles. The rat that's always pictured at Ganesh's feet is symbolic of obstacles. That's one symbolism. There's many symbols in Ganesh. And Ganesh is overcoming the obstacle by conquering the rat. And sometimes Ganesh is seen in a kind of a sleigh where the rat is pulling the sleigh and pulling Ganesh along. And so Ganesh is using the rat as a vehicle to propel himself, to make himself more dynamic. So what Ganesh is doing is symbolizing our ability to overcome obstacles and turn them in our favor. And the interesting thing about Ganesh is not only known as the remover of obstacles, but I've also read that Ganesh is the one who can place obstacles in our path to begin with. And Lori Guiding Light, you're waving your head yes. So you've heard that as well. And it's interesting. So Ganesh will say, all right, I'm going to place this obstacle in front of you because it's a part of your grand journey. And how you navigate through that journey is going to be moving around these obstacles. And when we think about obstacles, what do we think of? The first thing I think of when I hear the word obstacle is this: I visualize this big boulder in my way. And it's a bad thing. It's a thing that is this immovable object that I need to figure out a way to get around, right? But instead, I think Ganesh energy teaches us to view the obstacle as something more dynamic, something that we can move through, and something that perhaps we can even use as an ally. And maybe the obstacle can be viewed as a question instead of a big rock, right? So if you're facing an obstacle, you may just say, why is this obstacle being invited as a blessing into my life at this time? What am I to learn from this obstacle? And even how can the obstacle be worked towards my advantage? Because that's why Ganesh or the universe put it there, right? So another way of viewing obstacles is to think about your obstacle with compassion. I was thinking about my left knee and Don's left ankle and thinking about how we view those as obstacles. We can view illness as an obstacle. We can view injury as an obstacle. And there's an author named Stephen Levine who has studied many sick people, many cancer patients, people in hospitals in general that were inflicted with something. And Stephen Levine said, isn't it amazing how the first thing that happens when we get injured is we curse? Like, think about hitting your finger with a hammer. We want to curse that injury. We want to hate the illness. And if you back up and think about it, how is that any way for something to heal? It's part of the universe, it's part of your body. And instead of sending hatred into our injury, we should send mercy and compassion and love and kindness, because isn't that how it's healed? And so I know that there's a lot of alternative thinking now about viewing. Paul Hasselbeck said it a few months ago when he found out that he was inflicted with HIV. He decided not to think of it as in wanting to destroy the HIV, but he thought of wanting to ally with it, somehow partner with it. And so that's an interesting thing to do as you go through this mindset of obstacles. And finally, I was reading about Ganesh, and it said that obstacles can be allies that can open doors and create new opportunities for us. So think about a point in your life where maybe something happened that you viewed as an obstacle that ended up being something that opened a doorway for you. I think I talked about a year ago about in childhood, I was bullied a lot in grade school. And that was certainly a very painful obstacle. But it turned out that it gave me compassion for all those who were persecuted and who are persecuted. It made me a more sensitive individual in terms of the plight of others, and it made me more of an empath. So turning that obstacle to our favor. So coming back to Ganesh, we talked about Ganesh being the Lord of thresholds. We talked about Ganesh being the remover of obstacles and even the placer of obstacles. And finally, Ganesh is known as the God of beginnings. There's a movie called Begin Again, and it's got Keira Knightley and Adam Levine. Maybe some of you have seen it. And their characters go through a breakup at the beginning of the movie. Their boyfriend, girlfriend, they break up. They're both going through career changes. And the gist of the movie is they have to reinvent how they view each other. And no, at the end of the movie, they didn't, spoiler alert, they did not end up getting back together. even though that's the hope in the way most scripts are written, they ended up viewing each other in a different way in which they were both individually happy in the end. And they both grew their careers in some surprising ways, and they reinvented themselves. So this whole thing about new beginnings, I always am excited to talk about, because isn't it captivating to think about new beginnings? Myrtle Fillmore talks about it a lot, beginning again, new beginnings. And in New Thought in general, Denise Lessey in her class will probably refer to this, how the mindset of creating again. And during our board meeting, we were doing a visioning session for our future, and Austin Lesia said, remember what we're doing here. We're co-creating our reality with these thoughts, with these visions. We are creating our future. So it's very important to realize that, and to realize our power in that. So that's the third principle of unity, and that's what we were doing in the prayers as we went from the first prayer from BJ, establishing that God is all there is. The second prayer from Denise, establishing we are one with God, so we too have all of these resources and the power to create. And principle number 3, we realize and create our reality every day with what we think and do. So creating new beginnings is something that we certainly can do in any moment, in small ways and big ways. And as I think about this phrase, begin again, I think, okay, what are the ways that we can begin again? There are a couple, and if I just said a few words about new beginnings and words that align with that, I think about forgiveness. Forgiveness is letting someone else off the hook. You're beginning again a new relationship with what you think about that person in your mind. Willingness. You're willing to stand up and step forward and say, I want a new beginning. I want a change. That's the first step. And then you identify what it is. And sometimes what you have to do is you have to change your mind in a small way or in a big way. One of the ways that I changed my mind this week was changing my mind about the plan that I've had. My plan was that when my job ends at Coursera in March, and I've already started job hunting, it's a contract, and when it ends, I'm going to go get the next big marketing job, consumer marketing job, and that's just my plan. But I'm rethinking that. Why not think totally outside of the box about other careers? And why not target companies that are doing something interesting that I care about, and leave myself open to what the job description is? So I'm really just kind of re-engineering how I'm thinking about my future and changing my plan. And it's very liberating, and it's a little bit scary at the same time. So in the end, we don't have to stick with the plan. We can view obstacles as allies and even friends. We can give compassion and mercy to obstacles instead of hate. And we can create a new beginning with small decisions and with big decisions, in small ways and in big ways, every day, every moment. So let's go within for a moment of prayer. As I take a breath, I'm just connecting myself with the divine nature and envisioning Ganesh, who is just another expression of God. Ganesh dancing through the obstacles of life and teaching us to dance and be flexible and begin again and go through our obstacles, viewing them as blessings. Through God, we are actively co-creating our reality. As I take another breath, I remind myself that I'm here in the right place, in the right time, to make a new beginning in this world. All that I need to make that happen is here. I just need to awaken to that. In my heart. And then it will awaken in the world. I'm so grateful for this realization, and I call it blessed. And so it is.
Pray for me when things turn upside down and all seems lost, with no light to be found. There is a blessing in every breath. When you pray for me, pray for me when my heart is sinking fast and holding on to what I thought would last. Oh, lift me up when I can't let go. I'm wrapped in love when you pray for me. Oh, pray for me, and I will make it through. From this place, I can't see what is true. There is a blessing in every breath, and a love that's real beyond the veil of death. Pray for me, oh, pray for me.